Okay, well, I've never tried this format before. When I do my podcast, they're like 25 to 45 minutes. But this started as a comment on YouTube. And it was a comment about a question that was asking whether neurodivergence is truly pathological or if it's a expression of the natural variety within the human species. And my answer was that it's both, but I wanted to explain why, and I kind of ran out of room in the comment thingy to like put in enough detail. But here's what my response was. The first sentence captures most of it. Neurodivergent disorders are only pathological to the system that labels them that way. They're not inherently pathological to the people who live with them. And I use the word system here. So in order to understand what the system is, you need to understand that it's not a single entity. The system is actually a dense web of mutually reinforcing structures. They're mutually engendering, is what we call it in like Chinese medicine, where each one grows the next. Education feeds labor, labor feeds the economy rules politics, and the prison system and the judicial system all keep the economy going. All of these systems are intertwined, and that's the important part to understand, because it is that system that has come up with the DSM. It is that system that has come up with all psychological training. And it is that system that has labeled neurodivergence as pathological. Our current version of capitalism doesn't require just stability anymore, which would be enough on its own. But now it survives on perpetual growth, and we are reaching a place because of the stock market where it's perpetual growth as fast as you can possibly grow. And that's just gotten exponentially faster yet again because of AI. But growth requires predictability. I talk about this all of the time in like the trauma stuff with developmental trauma. If there's chronic stress, you have no predictability, and so your brain and your myelination around your vagus nerve and other places doesn't develop. Your brain doesn't develop like it's supposed to. Your amygdala stays too small because there's no predictability. Nothing can grow. And predictability requires standardization, and standardization requires humans who can sit still on command, focus on abstract, boring tasks for really long pieces of time, obey arbitrary hierarchies, regulate emotion in socially palatable ways, delay gratification, usually for institutional rewards, and suppress your instinct when it interferes with productivity. That is what we call neurotypical. That's the definition of a neurotypical human being. And it's important to keep in mind that that is the definition according to our psychology system, our education system. Therefore, it is part of the system at whole that needs this constant growth. Anything that deviates from that, we call neurodivergent, and it's problematic because it is not predictable. Therefore, it is not rewarded. It is not even just not rewarded. In the DSM and in most of the minds of the Western world, it is pathological. But my point is, it is pathological. Neurodivergence is pathological only to the system that labels it as such, and not to the individuals. And that's important because when we use the word pathology, we're always talking about personal pathologies. We're talking about a breakdown of a system of a person. That's usually the disease, is there some pathology where the organism is breaking down. But in this case, the organism is not the individual. The organism is the system at large. We need repetitive labor, we need monotony, we need artificial time structures, abstract reward loops, and bureaucratic obedience. And the things that we associate with neurodivergence and specifically ADHD and stuff is like hypervigilance, which in a not our system world, in the rest of your human experience, hypervigilance becomes threat detection. And like all of these things that we see as pathological, sensory sensitivity, that becomes environmental safety and fluency. Our pattern seeking minds becomes a way for us to develop a strategy because we can see patterns and predict them and develop a strategy around how to survive. Our reactivity becomes a rapid response time. This is This is one of my, like, it's so obvious, it's painful things about how ADHD is a trauma response. Novelty seeking becomes exploration. Do you see how all of these pathological aspects of ADHD are only pathological to a system that is set on constant growth and predictability, and it is actually a wonderful thing outside of that system? But inside that, there are disorders, impairments, dysfunctions, deficits. The way they look at it is those nervous systems interfere with the machine. Therefore, they're pathological. That's my point. That's basically the whole thing in a nutshell. There's nothing wrong with your brain. There's nothing wrong with the brains of people who are neurodivergent. They just aren't as easily applied as efficiently to the constant growth of the capitalistic machine.